Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Deidre Anderson and I write adult contemporary romance with black girls and the men who love them. So you'll get a lot of interracial and multicultural romances from me. So if that's something that you're into, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, ding that notification bell, and hit the like button so I know that you're supporting my journey and you like my content. This video will be episode 4 of the Tropey Wednesdays videos I have going on, where we discuss romance tropes 5 at a time in detail to give you some ideas of maybe tropes you weren't aware of before or tropes that you're interested in learning about more. So if you want to know about all the romance tropes, stay tuned because this will be one of the videos for you. All right, now welcome back. Okay, so the tropes we'll be discussing in this week's video, if you see me looking down, that's because I'm looking at my computer, y'all. So the tropes we'll be discussing in this week's video are afraid to commit, anti-hero, best friend's lover or best friends to lovers, bodyguard, and boss employee. All right, so without any further ado, let's dive in. Okay, so our first one, afraid to commit, is one that I don't really write a lot. I should, because I like reading it when it's done well. So it's essentially where either your hero or your heroine has commitment issues. And regardless of what they're feeling for your other love interest, they just refuse to commit because they're afraid. Generally it's because of some past trauma, or maybe they have never seen a relationship go well, so they've decided that, hey, relationships aren't for them. They aren't going to do it because it's not going to work out. So in fear of being hurt, they just don't commit. Other times I've seen it done where basically our protagonists are afraid to commit to anything at all. So they're not the commitment type, whether in committing to a restaurant to buy food, or committing to a best friend, or committing to a person. They don't commit to anything at all. So because they're of this massive fear of commitment, obviously they can't let someone in because they're afraid to commit to anything serious. That's the other one too. Sometimes they're just afraid to commit to a serious relationship. They don't mind having casual flings, but they're just not going to do anything that requires a large commitment. So those are multiple ways that I've seen this trope done, and done well, as long as you go ahead and you introduce the reason behind the character not liking to commit, or what's the root of the fear. Let the reader know the root. Don't just come up with it out of the blue, because then you'll piss a lot of readers off. So ensure that you establish the cause of the fear, the root of the fear, and ensure that along your story you see the character slowly overcoming this fear and eventually letting your protagonist in, your other protagonist in, and falling in love. That way you'll craft a believable romance and your readers will love you for it. All right, now the second thing we'll be discussing today, the second trope, is anti-hero. Now, if you remember in one of our previous videos, if you haven't watched those yet, I'll link them up above. But in one of our previous videos, we discussed the alpha male, or the alpha hero, or the alpha hole trope, right? Now, the anti-hero is sort of a derivative of that. If that's the word, I can't speak. But the anti-hero is sort of a spin-off of that trope, where essentially it's the hero or heroine or protagonist, regardless of gender, is basically the opposite of what you'd expect a hero to be. So we see this used a lot in the dark romance field because they're essentially the villains, right? They're essentially the characters. They have the character traits of who we would expect to be the villains of the story, but they're the hero. They're the ones that we're pushing through, that we're supposedly rooting for as readers, right? So sure, they have traits that villains would have. So maybe they unalive people, or maybe they're just not easy to like, right, to the other characters around. But for whatever reason, there's this one trait in that anti-hero that forces the reader to, well, not really forces, but you just can't help but root for, you just can't help but love, right? And so in most romances that I've seen this done well in, the heroes are, I've seen this go far left and still be done well, right? So the heroes, sometimes they're stalkers, sometimes they're just overly possessive, sometimes they are overly dominant and protective, sometimes they're overly jealous, sometimes they're in the mafia, so they're doing things that are not really so great, but for whatever reason, we as readers are forced to, or find ourselves rooting for them. Basically, maybe they're basically has-ats to everyone else around them, but as soon as the protagonist is in the picture, he's loving and he's caring and he's standing up for the protagonist when it's needed. And you see traits that a good love interest should have, except for it's coming from a villain-like character. And that's essentially the anti-hero trope. So if you want to see your villains fall in love and you want to see your villains have fun and basically get their happy endings, then you want to write the anti-hero trope. All right. Now, the third trope we'll be discussing in this video is the best friend's lover, or the best friend's two lovers, right? As the trope sounds, it's exactly what you're going to be writing. You're going to be writing best friends that essentially fall in love and run off in the sunset by the end of the book, right? Now, this trope is a little tricky because I've seen it done really well, and then I've seen it done not so great. Reason being, you have to have a definitive reason as to why these best friends weren't lovers from before. If they've always been best friends, they've always been in each other's lives, right? So you need to determine a believable reason as to why these two characters were not already in a relationship. What has stopped them from going forward and exploring these feelings? Are these feelings new feelings? Were they basically there before but not explored? You need to craft a believable story and a believable backstory to ensure that the readers buy that, hey, they were just friends all along within this platonic relationship and magically feelings has arrived, right? Because the people aren't changing. The characters that they've been friends with for the whole time, they still have the same characteristics, they still have the same personality. So what is that determining factor that has made your protagonist now realize, hey, they sort of want this to be more than a friendship, and they're willing and ready to go for it? All right. So the fourth trope we'll be discussing is the bodyguard. Now, we've all swooned over the bodyguard that, maybe brooding over the side, watching the person they're supposed to be protecting and having feelings for them or being attracted to them. But because it's their job, because they're supposed to be just protecting them, right? They keep their distance and they watch them go and they party and they do whatever they're doing while not actually, they're having a miserable time because they're watching the person that they're developing feelings for or attracted to do everything, but not with them, right? So that's a fun way to do the bodyguard trope, right? It's just as the trope suggests. Most of these tropes are pretty straightforward, right? As soon as you hear it, you know what you're getting. So you're getting a bodyguard. This can be used with royalty. This can be used with celebrity. It can be combined. It can be used with athletes. It can be used with billionaires. It can be combined with a lot of the other tropes. And so you want to pick the tropes that you pair well, that they merge well, right? Because the bodyguard is just, as it says, there is a bodyguard. One of your main protagonists is the bodyguard, and throughout whatever happens, maybe there's something that forces the bodyguard and the person that they're supposed to be guarding or protecting together in a confined space, and they realize that, hey, they actually have a lot in common and they actually could make it work in a relationship context. Or maybe they've just always been attracted to that person, and because they're forced together, or because something happens, depending on what other tropes you pair it with, then they decide to explore those feelings. And that will look different depending on the steam level that you're writing and depending on the different tropes that you're using. So that's the bodyguard trope. So if you're looking for something new and interesting to write, go ahead and throw a bodyguard in there, play with this trope, and have some fun. All right, the last trope we will be discussing in this video is the boss employee trope. Now, we all love a good office romance when done well. All right, now this did get a little bit of pushback when the whole Me Too era began to rise, because you always want to be sensitive in the content you're putting out, right? But I have seen this done really, really, really well. This is another one of those tropes that can go really well or really bad, right? So you will have some readers that really love this trope and others that will never touch it with a 6-foot broom. So you want to be able to be in the category that they will always pick up when they see, oh, boss employee romance from insert your name here. They want to reach for you because you're doing it justice. And how do you do it justice? Essentially, be smart, be respectful. Of course, with any relationship that's going to be progressing, or with different dynamics of characters, you have a boss, you have an employee, and that power dynamic can go real sketchy real fast. So you want to ensure you're doing, unless you're writing a dark romance, and then, you know, push the boundaries as much as you want, as much as you're comfortable with, just do it well. But for us normal romance authors that are not writing dark, right? So you want to be respectful of the other character's space. Let's not go out stalking the person. Let's not abuse your power. You don't want to fire the person because you're having an argument. You don't want to disadvantage the person in any way, right? And you don't want to give them too many advantages that the other employees are having, because then you're playing with that power dynamic, right? Just have them have a lot of sexual tension. You're falling for your employee, or you're falling for your boss. Put your head in that character's experiences and decide what would this be like. If you're super attracted to your boss and you're walking, maybe you're his assistant. That's a popular dynamic that's done, boss assistant. You are constantly alone with your boss. How will your relationship or your attraction affect your interactions? That's what people want to see. So in the boss employee trope, go ahead and have fun with it, play with it. Imagine, put yourself in every scene you're in and say, okay, if I was to go to a conference with my boss alone in a hotel and we're attracted to each other, I keep fantasizing about my boss, or I am attracted to this man, woman, or man, woman, non-binary, whoever your boss is. I keep fantasizing about my boss. How will that make the situation? Obviously, it's going to be awkward. So build on that sexual tension and give the readers a good story that eventually as they progress, as they continue, of course, they're going to fight it at first, because who wants to put themselves in that awkward situation on purpose, right? So they're going to fight the connection that they're feeling, but eventually it'll become too much to avoid, right? And they'll end up together and having their happily ever after. Remember, this is romance. Always have a happy ever after. All right, so that is the last trope we'll be discussing today. Those were the 5. So just to remind you, we discussed the afraid to commit, anti-hero, best friends lovers / best friend to lovers, bodyguard, and boss employee. All right, I'll also leave the list below, so if you ever want to just click back on one of these videos, you'll know what video discussed what tropes. All right, and I will continue in next week videos with a new 5 for you. All right, so if you have any questions about any of these tropes, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. If you think I missed out anything when talking about any of these tropes, also drop it in the comments below and let's start a discussion. All right, so hit that like button so I know that you're following my journey and you like the content I'm putting out. Hit that subscribe button and ding that notification bell so you can be notified each and every time I upload. These Tropey Wednesdays videos will come out every Wednesday. I'm actually going to be scheduling a bunch of them in advance. So if you see them, go ahead and hit those reminders so that as soon as they go live, you will see them. All right, and until next time, be kind to one another, love each other, do every action with love. All right, again, my name is Deidre Anderson. I write adult contemporary romance. And until we meet again, bye.